Hello and welcome to In Deep, where we discover the talent, inspiration, and challenges behind some of our favorite film, television, games, and advertising. Today, we're going to be welcoming production designer Anna Rhodes to the stream, which you've probably seen from our website. But before I do that, I'd just like to give a very quick shout out to the chat. Hello to Nick, Lily, Kathy Wang, as always, and hello Ed, and everybody else that's there. I can see you all lurk, and make sure you say hi. Kieran Grant, hello very much. Okay, so Anna's sitting on hold at the moment, but I'd like to just quickly show you where to find her. But again, there's a reason for why I want you to say hi in the chat and ask any questions that you have at any point. We'll be trying to answer them all on the fly. But for the best community member of the week, whoever asked the best questions and just has the best chat, we'll be giving away either tours or beer tokens from our friends over at the 5 Points Brewing Company. They've just added some things. Are you a bitter guy? Are you a bitter lady? Well, they've got you covered, because get that 5 points best. Just get a cask of it. Why not? So with that anyway, remember also to it'd be a really huge favor for us if you hit subscribe, and then also follow all of the socials that I'm about to share with you for Anna. You can of course find her at studio-rhodes.com for her personal work. She's also represented by our supporters Wizzo. That's wizzoandco.co.uk. Then of course their Instagram handle is Wizzo and Co, and Anna's is Anna Rhodes right there. So don't you can find that one. But then also of course I recommend this other thing that I've just found, which I'm also going to ask Anna about, Reference Bank. Go ahead and give that a follow. So with that in mind, I would like to welcome Anna Rhodes, production designer, to the show. Hello and welcome, Anna. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm just chilling up here in Walthamstow. Whereabouts are you?
I am chilling, or not quite that chilly actually, but in Greenwich.
Oh, lovely.
In lovely Greenwich.
Nice. And what's getting you through this whole wonderful COVID thing? Are you picking up any? Got any new vices? Any new hobbies?
Well, I've kind of like really relaxed into the whole making stuff that I would have made as either like an 8-year-old child or maybe a granny. Like I'm sort of making some jewelry. I've been doing some printing and painting, and I'm planning on working out. My next project's about curtains.
Nice.
I'm pretty much a curtain fanatic, and I really want to learn how to make them myself.
Yeah, we briefly spoke about our shared passion for a really good pair of curtains, a good set of curtains. Can't be beaten, right?
You just can't. You can't beat a good window dressing. You have to know what the window needs.
What does this do? Do you walk up to an empty window and go, "What do you need? What do you need, little friend?"
I'm not joking. I've got about 5 different books on curtains.
Oh, really? What are they different types of curtains? Tell us about some of those. What's there? There's a lot to say, right?
There's a lot to say. I mean, my favourite are the kind of like, particularly blinds, the sort of really festoony. I think they're called Australian. They're actually called. I don't know if you're Australian. No. I'm sorry if you're not.
So I'm not sorry that I'm not. Sorry, no, carry on.
But they're like the really festoon, like bulbous blinds that are like relaxed Roman style, that you only saw in the 80s and 90s. I'm ready to bring them back.
Yeah, bring it back. Bring it. I've got a block of flats across me, and they've got all kinds of wide arrays of window coverings, from wonderful, beautiful, simple net curtains to newspaper just stuck across it, just staring at little copies of the Sun and the Daily Mail every single.
Well, that's a great set decoration tip, actually.
Is it?
Really beautiful textures.
Good for textures, eh? That's what I'll say. Great texture. Anyway, we're not here to talk about curtains. Don't worry, guys. Um, uh, we wanted to, the main thing that we wanted to get you onto, let's go right back to the beginning. As a production designer, art director, you have an interesting story. How did you get into production design in the first place? Let's rewind all the way back.
Okay, so all the way back, I left school and went to Chelsea College of Art to do my foundation. Mm-hmm. And I was really in two minds about whether I wanted to do spatial design, like interior design, or graphics. But I had this insanely wonderful tutor on the graphic design segment, and I went with that. I didn't know whether I was going to be a graphic designer forever, but I just went with it, and got on the BA at Chelsea as well, and just loved it. And it was really more focused on a kind of like art direction and conceptual design vibe. It really wasn't just learn typography, learn how to make a font, or just pure layout. It was really about the bigger idea. And for my final project, I actually made a giant 3D sculpture of a coin-operated giraffe ride, the kind of ride that you'd put 20p in as a child and ride on.
My daughter's obsessed with one of those right now, actually.
They were just wonderful, weren't they? But I realised that I hadn't really thought about them since I was probably about 10. And I was like making a comment on the use of nostalgia in design that linked back to my thesis. And anyway, it worked, and it was really cool. And from there, I was really lucky to get a job straight away at MTV as like a junior freelancer. Mm-hmm. And that was just such a cool place to work. And I was doing pure graphics there, but moving image. So they were teaching me how to use After Effects and animate and make little idents that some of them got on air. And it was just like the coolest place to work, because you're doing this really fun work, but with really fun people. But you also, like, everyone was at sort of 5 p.m. would be like, let's all go to the pub. There was like such a cool community back then. Yeah. In Camden as well, and it was in Camden back in the kind of like post Libertines, Amy Winehouse era, so it was like a good time. Yeah. And then so in the department there were all these like fledgling directors, James Copeman, Dan Sully, and I think Chris Sweeney worked there, and I was very close friends with James Copeman, and he said, oh, you've got to come. I'm making a music video for the Mystery Jets, and I want you to come and I want you to choreograph it. Oh. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, like whatever, that'll be fun. And he'd known that I did a little bit of dancing at school, but I really wasn't. I just need to say I was not a choreographer. Okay. I'm not a choreographer, but it was just one of those things where it was like, I'll do it. And so it was for the Young Love video with Laura Marling and Mystery Jets.
Oh,
and I turned up.
Amazing. The one where they're all kind of lying on the floor and they kind of come in and out.
Yes.
Amazing. I love that video.
And it's also just like one of my favourite songs. It never gets old, that song.
It does not.
And I love the video. And then, so I got on set and I immediately just loved it. And I was like, what is this? And I met James's producer, Tamsin Glasson, and she kind of slightly took me under her wing, and she was treating me a bit like work experience, which was really kind of her. And there was a frame that was set up, and Laura Marling was lying on a rug, this like kind of green rug, and it was really crumpled and it wasn't straight. And I was like, oh, I obviously didn't know the etiquette at all, but I was like, can't shoot that. They can't shoot it looking like that. It's got to look right. And I said something to Tamsin. She was like, well, go on then. Go and put the rug down properly. And this is amazing. I just want to be putting rugs down on sets all the time. She was like, well, you should start art department assisting. And she put me in touch with James Hatt, who's a production designer, amazing production designer. And I started assisting him for a few years, like from being a little baby art department assistant who didn't know anything to like one of his main assistants. And that was kind of it. Like I just carried on. I upped the amount of work I was doing assisting designers, and I was decreasing the amount of work I was doing as a graphic designer.
Oh, okay. So
and then made the switch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense, really, the graphic design thing, especially with a project like Absolute that we will be talking about later. So definitely keep that in mind. But when you sort of started out, I mean, was that something that you were was production design anything that you were aware of? Did you have any heroes in mind when you started with, or did you just go with instinct and your education as a designer to get you started?
No, I really didn't know that the job existed. I hadn't any idea.
Wow.
I hadn't even thought about it. And no one had ever told me about it. Yeah. I knew that there was a thing called set design, and that was a kind of like abstract idea to me, but I'd never really, even though I was really interested in interior design and still am, I'd never even considered, as a 21-year-old, I hadn't considered it. And it was only from that one experience where I was like, wow, this is like all of my interests roll into one, and all of my skills, like all of my personality type, like everything was just felt suited to art department.
Wow, that is absolutely crazy. So, I mean, a long time has passed now. Since then, obviously we're in a unique thing. Because we're in the COVID thing, when we initially spoke, we were talking about a certain project that we may or may not be able to talk about, the Ali Green's project. Working remotely, just to shift gears completely on you, has that really posed any kind of interesting problems for you? Because obviously Ali highlighted some of the things some of the issues that she's had facing the challenge, but is there anything that comes to mind with you, or things that you took for granted before that you now will treasure always?
Oh yeah, I would never ever complain about going to super hire ever again. Which is like a warehouse in Acton that's packed with like kind of naughties everyday props that everyone sort of slightly grumbles about, but it's just it's heaven on earth at this point.
Parking lot is heaven on earth.
We've had to be relying on Amazon Prime a lot for anything.
Oh my god, this is why Bezos is rich, because of production design.
Yeah, Bezos started COVID. No, I'm really joking.
Whoa.
Imagine. That would be a really good super villain plan, wouldn't it?
That would be, yeah. He's just like, how do I get everybody stuck at home depending on me for everything that they need, the lazy bastards.
Yeah. All those art departments.
Okay. Is there anything that's in doing this, because when we were chatting, you talked about sort of how you would, as a production designer, you have an attention to detail, and that's what makes you good at what you do. So I imagine that has a lot of that is letting go of control, a big thing of that you've had to learn to do in the COVID situation, or are you still as picky as you perhaps were before with the design in productions during this time?
Yeah, I've definitely had to let go of some of my more controlling aspects of my personality, and also you have to switch on your kind of more emotionally intelligent side, because the people that you're working with are the people whose houses you're filming it with. They are the location owners, and they're often also the talent. So you have to be really gentle and know when to stop, when to sort of say enough's enough, or when to know when something's too much for something to do. Like, they're not going to be able to move that sofa or whatever it might be.
Yeah. They're not able to take down that terrible picture that their child painted in the background because you break their heart.
Oh yeah, I know. I've done quite a bit of that.
just turn the camera slightly. Have you asked to move the camera rather than? Is it easier to ask to reframe, or is it easier to ask them to take it down?
That's interesting, actually. Yeah, I feel as though the collaboration between the DPs and myself it's been more of a like problem-solving process, where we've had to like really solve the problem together, because everyone knows that there isn't going to be like maybe the depth that we need, or the light's not quite right, or the light's not right in the at the angle that looks really cool, but we have to get the light right because their faces have to be lit. So compromises have been made, and then there have been more compromises, but it's been a really sort of interesting way of like changing the way I work. Yeah. And obviously I don't have a team, like none of my lovely team is around me, but that's fine.
Yeah. Are you just in small little WhatsApp groups fiercely messaging each other going like, oh my god, what is that?
There's a lot of that because they also the talent who is always operating the camera remotely for us can hear everything we're discussing. So
and is the client in there? I mean, just so imagine this array. I'm just imagining a whole gallery of images, and that must be pretty intimidating for the talents and things as well, having to satisfy all that stuff, and then they've got like this bank, this whole array of eyes on them, all kind of like quietly judging them and dissatisfied with what's being done.
Well, it's interesting that I think somebody really figured that out right at the beginning, that wouldn't be a good idea. So we have like a core, like director, DP, myself, and producer, and maybe the DIT, if there is one, or the PM would be on camera, and then we would set up the shot together, make sure they're comfortable. The director might want to do a rehearsal, and then the agency and the client will switch on. We'll join the Zoom meeting, but their cameras will be off. Oh. And the producer's got a WhatsApp group with us going, and he's also got a WhatsApp group with the agency going, making sure everyone's happy, and the producer will feedback into the Zoom chat. Yeah, it's long-winded.
That must be quite intense. It is. Has everybody coped with it quite well? I mean, I imagine that must be quite a long day, quite a stressful hopping between all those things. Whereas, of course, you could just naturally just take somebody aside or catch, or even in exchanging a look, you take a lot of that for granted. And I think of just going, "What's that about?" Or "That wasn't right," or "Move that." That's quite weird. In long and short of it, I'm sorry for the pain that you're going through right now. That's really terrible.
I'm not having to drive from Greenwich to Acton every day, so that's like blessing. That's a real blessing.
Yeah. Are you going to change the way you get there from now on? Are you going to just cycle there, or as Boris says, get there under your own power. Just get over to Acton from Greenwich. You'll be fine.
Oh no, he doesn't seem. That would take me so. I mean. Good idea, Boris.
Yeah. Just to go back into the regular stuff, I was just wondering, as a production designer, one thing, of course, and you'll see it from all the things we're playing, guys. You craft quite highly stylized work, but then also at the same time you swing between highly stylized and then creating more naturalistic or real worlds. With that, do you have a favorite thing that mode that you like working in, and do you, if it's the real, do you get a special kick out of tricking people, or tricking the eye, should I say?
Yeah, I think that I always find it. Well, it's nice to have a balance. I think if anyone did one thing for the rest of their lives that's it's really samey, that it would end up getting boring. But I love creating worlds that are a bit stylized and a little bit uncanny, like elements of magical realism. That's what gets me going,
Right. Yeah.
I really love thinking about things that are a bit different. Putting a different spin on something that you've seen before.
Yeah. I guess make that kind of heightened reality is quite present in all of your work, really. I mean, it goes all the way in Virgin, which is wonderful, which we'll have a look at in a little bit. Is there a certain type of project that is attracting you most at this moment, or what is it that you look for in a project these days that you think that's the one for me, that's what I want to do next?
Well, I'm lucky that I work with some really cool directors, and a lot of them have got very different styles. and they also don't ever want to stick to like one particular style. But if I get a treatment, there are some directors I know, if I get treatments from them, it's going to be really, really good. Like I can just trust that I'm going to want to do it. And then with treatments that I get from new directors, it's just whether there's like a feeling for like set within the deck, whether the references are there. And when you read the scripts, it's about how heavily the sets are kind of like featured in the way they've written the script, or, you know, you just always get a feeling. And then sometimes it's not, the sets aren't important at all. So for example, with the Pride film that we just saw, that really wasn't a part of the treatment process. It wasn't like a really big part. There wasn't like a 2 or 3 page art directions sort of section to the treatment that was dedicated to it. But the photography references in there were just so beautiful. And the portraits, so we were looking at like portraiture of like Linda Brownlee, or people like that who just make beautiful spaces and create beautiful atmospheres. And sometimes those jobs are really nice to do, rather than like relying on the set to do all the talking.
Yeah. You know? Where do you have any certain, I mean, as a production designer, you'll be drawing inspiration from a lot of different places, but do you have a certain set of touchstones that you always call back to, that you're just like, this is where I always start here, or this is something that I'm always referencing, or always start off as a springboard for other ideas?
Oh, I mean, I'm a mood board fanatic. I have to mood board everything and research and reference everything. It's so important to me. And the mood board isn't just like the mood board it becomes its own thing in my head. Whether anyone really looks at it properly or not, it's just that for me, it's where my ideas come from. And even it, you know, I'm not going to like copy references. But I'll start thinking about things in terms of color and shape and vibe and like tonally, or you know, I just think mood board is the one thing that I do start. Oh, and here's one of my mood boards.
Yes. This is of course the part of the production mood boards that Anna was kind enough to share with us for the absolute spot that you saw before. There's quite a lot of things. This must have been a really fun project to sort of sink your teeth into, because it crosses through so many different eras, and each one has lots of different stylistic elements, but there's lots of like real world texture in the mix, with also all those Easter eggs and not so and a little bit more overt nods to the art of Absolute in there. Could you tell us a little bit about this project and how it came to you? And is something like that spans through the eras something that is a dream job, or is that something that fills you with dread?
Oh, it was like a complete dream brief. It was like one of my dream jobs from the very moment I got the treatment. So it was based in New York, and the whole idea was that this guy was going to walk down the street, and we couldn't work out how it was going to work, but he had to walk down the same street 4 times, 80s, 90s, noughties, and 10s. So we were like, as from the word go, from the first initial meeting, we were trying to work out like how this was going to happen, because he also had to go into a bar at the end of the street, the way it was going to work. And I think Oscar developed this as time went on, was that the loop happened by him entering the bar, dropping off a newspaper, and then exiting the bar, and the street was the same, but it was 10 years later. So how we ended up designing that was by doing this double-sided set. So we built 2 streets, and they were linked by these 2 bars. And we had to redecorate the entire thing overnight. We started with the 80s and the 90s, and then we had a whole sort of redecoration evening.
Oh God!
To sort of do a whole redress, ready for the next morning.
Oh, wow.
So it was tough. It was a toughie. I didn't get much sleep, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
In the end.
As a production designer, especially like looking through a piece like this, are you ever really do you ever feel really quite sad to have to deconstruct some of these spaces that you create? I mean, like some of the bars and those spaces. Do you ever feel like, actually, this is a really great space. I wish I could put it away in a warehouse somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, for a start, it's like super bad for the environment. It's really hard. It's really hard to find a way to build and dispose of sets in an environmentally friendly way. It's just something that everyone, I think a lot of people in the industry are focusing on finding a solution to. Yeah. But on the other hand, I mean, the Naughties bar was like my baby. That was the part of the set that I loved the absolute most, and it was kind of inspired by these like downtown Lower East Side Vice bars in New York back when I was like a kid. And I actually studied in New York a bit for about 5 months when I was about 20, and I just used to just go and creep in these bars waiting for one of the Strokes to turn up and be like, "Oh, yeah." And I was just that embarrassing girl. But I basically made the bar like that. Just copied it. It was really cool. We had like chipboard and like graffiti and loads of like, really cool stuff.
Is that why there's a Strokes reference in there?
Oh yeah, is there shit? We also had a really fun rap party in that bar, so it felt like it served a couple of purposes.
Damn, it's kind of like a festival, I guess, in that kind of way, isn't it? Always these beautiful structures that have a temporary, like a Cinderella kind of effect to it. One night, it's wonderful, and then it's gone. Very sad. I don't know why. I'm getting all morose now. It must be quite fun getting to craft those worlds, though, with sort of in concert with the director and then the DOP as well, because of all those extra layers of light and camera and things. Really makes the world come to life in that way. I mean, when you see everything with the lights on, it's like it doesn't have the full effect. But like, what is, if you were to pick a favorite part of the process for you of production design from the very beginning of initiating the concept through to the end, do you have a certain phase or aspect that you're always like, yes, this is my favorite bit?
I love the initial ideas and the research and development phase. When I get to like sit in my studio for a couple of days and just be like, how can I make this really cool? And then the next phase I love is talking to the DOP, like you just suggested, and talk about how we can develop the sets in a way that's going to like really heighten it, and how lighting and art can work together. And with Absolute, Oscar has a long-term collaborator, Ruben Deschamps, who's amazing, and he shot this beautifully, and we developed the references and the color palettes together. And then there's like a stressful bit, and then you get to set and start shoot, and it's lit, and it's like, that's the money shot for me, when you can see it all come together, and it's amazing. It's a really good feeling.
It's pretty intimidating, even looking at some of these things when you're dealing with such a large build in this way, with so many different elements that have to come together, and of course, because the whole point of the campaign is to be spotting. Your either eyes isn't just letting everything passively pass by, it's encouraged for you to actively look and spot things, so you're really scrutinizing the scene. Was that a little bit of a concern for you, or did you just have so much to work with that you just thought, this is just loads of fun, I can't wait to fit all this in?
Well, we had as often with these like really cool creative projects, the budget was extremely limited, and so was the time frame. So it was like a real race to get any of this done, and we had to make it so detailed, and there was just layers and layers and layers of detail in there, some of which you'll just never see because of the way the Steadicam operated. You just miss a whole load of stuff that someone would have spent a day making, each item. And Absolute, the artwork for Absolute posters and their archive is obviously just so rich. We wanted to really like respect each one of those artists and put a reference in so we made bottles. We sort of tried to recreate each poster as a bottle, and throughout there's a delay, so I can't really point things out, but you'll see the spot that there's some like funny little installation somewhere. And the other cool thing that I really liked about this was developing the toy shop window, because each one of those, obviously it changed over the decades, and the name slightly changed. It went through a rebrand, and each one had its own like toy that was featured heavily, that was supposed to like be really indicative of the era, the decade it was in. So yeah, the bars, the toy. I mean, it was just a really fun job. The paint plan that you've blocked up on screen a couple of times. It was like the most crazy mind map I've ever had to do, because there's probably about maybe 400 different paint colors that had to be picked like quickly over and overnight, and I had to like map out everything and like really get my kind of like E equals MC squared brain on.
Yeah, because I suppose also it's one thing to pick a color or a certain palette, and then once the light, when you're working with the DOP, of course that can change everything in that thing, and then of course to the grade. But you work, you have quite a large team beneath you, from prop buyers to, of course, the fabricators, the set builders, as well. Do you is interacting with things like the deciding on the wardrobe and costume and things like that? Is that another thing that you love turning your hand to, or is that something that you like to trust to somebody else?
With the wardrobe, specifically with the wardrobe, I think I love I just love collaborating with really good costume designers, and making sure that everyone's working towards the same kind of like bigger idea, and seeing their mood boards and them seeing mine, and then us kind of like sparking off each other. So I think costume is an amazingly important part of everything. But I'm not. I'm not. That's not my job.
No, of course not.
Sometimes there are crossovers, like the little bunny rabbit. So that wasn't. Was that me? No, that wasn't me. But it could have been me. There's always a conversation about, who's getting the bag? That kind of thing.
Of course. You mentioned your favorite part being development. What is the worst part of your process for you? What is the one? Is there an element that you dread?
I find I suppose it's like last minute changes. It's probably the same answer anyone would give, which is last minute changes that come from like a source that you don't really, that isn't close to you, that don't make sense to you, and are really hard to implement in the time you've got. I think that's stressful, because you want it to be as good as possible. So you have to like really, really work. It's just worrying when you're not sure you can really fully do what's being asked in the time scale. But there's always a conversation that's had, and then some. It's always fine in the end.
Is there? Everybody's always had experiences of times that the wheels have sort of fallen off, like whether you're running out of time or something terrible has happened. Can you think of a time, without naming it? You don't have to name a specific production, but has there ever been a time when the wheels fell off and either you somehow pulled it off, or fooled the eye in some sort of way, found some sort of work, some sort of compromise, or a time that maybe it didn't, that you can recall, or something that perhaps haunts you or you learnt from?
Yeah, I guess there's been like loads of times that I've just winged it. In terms of like fooling the eye, though, it's like quite a fun job. The Borsan job, which was the Channel 4 Film 4 Borsan adverts. We were looking for locations for ages to find something that felt like a Parisian apartment, and just couldn't. We couldn't find the right place, and we ended up being thought kind of like, we ended up having to shoot in this one apartment, this house in Wandsworth, and we couldn't really find a good angle. And I ended up like just having this idea based on the fact that I'd recently watched the whole back catalogue of Roy Andersson films and watched the documentary about the making of You the Living. And he uses a lot of trompe l'oeil and floating set pieces on locked off shots to make the set appear to be larger and deeper than it is. So did you just put the Bolsonaro on? Is that? That's very clever. So if you go to the shot of them, like dead on, looking the two shot of them, and looking at the kind of background through those double doors, that's fake. So what all that is we're shooting into their hallway, and we built like a backdrop that was like a kind of trompe l'oeil effect. That was like I designed this Parisian style windows and like tried to make in a very, very like it wasn't very detailed because I knew I was going to put these drapes over the top of them. But that was just a black,
just with little different coloured lights inside of them.
No different gels. So then I gelled all, and then we put light behind it, and then we put a balustrade, like a balcony balustrade, in front of that, and then these glass doors, and suddenly, hopefully, you feel like you're in Paris.
Yeah, it's very effective. Well done. That's what I love to hear. Ed, sorry, I'll go to your question. I can see everybody's chomping at the bit with some questions here. Just change this 1 second. Ed asks, what's the process between you, the director, and DOP when using a lot of practical lights? Actually, does that question make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, the DP normally just wants loads of practical lights, and luckily I really also want to use loads of practical lights. So what will always happen on the recce is the DP will go, Anna, can you like get loads of practical lights? And I'm like, yeah, definitely. And then we bring in as much as possible. I mean, lamps.
They don't show up with their own lamps. They're like, I've got lamps.
No, they definitely don't do that. We even bring the light bulbs these days. Little grumble. A little bitchy interdepartmental interlude there. We just bring as many lights as possible and fill the frame. I've got a penchant for lights in the same way I've got a penchant for curtains.
Oh, nice. I mean, it makes sense. I love lights. There's so much that it brings into a scene, and it's just so visually stimulating. What's your favorite light? What kind of lights do you always try to fit in?
Ooh, well, I really like a parchment shade.
Parchment shade? What's that?
It's like it looks like a paper. It looks just like a normal paper drum shade. And I'm not really a fan of like the straight up and down drums. I like a taper.
Okay. Why is that?
I find that the taper has more romance to it. I sound like such a dick.
No, hey, we're all dicks here if that's the criteria.
I guess it goes back to like my graphics training. Just I kind of feel like a lot of vertical lines. It's just a bit distracting to me somehow. I prefer there to be like if there's a kind of taper to it.
This on the screen right now. Actually, there was some stills from the boat from Boat, which actually have all those lamps in it in several. Fantastic! Oh, good to know. That's good.
Yeah, and then you can't really beat a sort of pleated shade either, just for added texture.
Very nice, very nice.
And also dark warm colours.
Yes.
Never really a fan of like the cooler and the whites on the shades.
Okay. Oh, so it's always something warmer on the shade. Never.
Well, yeah. As long as I guess if it fits the palette. If you're doing something that's like super futuristic or like medical, I mean, yeah, you'd have to change your mind based on what you were doing, I suppose.
Let's have a chat about the Virgin campaign that you shot with another long-time collaborator of yours, I believe, and shot by Rina Yang. Am I saying that right? I never say it right.
Yeah, Rina Yang. She's awesome. I actually have only worked with her once, but I've known her for a long time. She's brilliant.
So
I've worked with Virgin was the first time.
So tell us a bit about this project. It's got a very distinct distinct look. I mean, it's super vibrant, super crazy. How did this project come to you, and how did it come together?
Well, this was directed by Rain Allen Miller, some such, and it was produced by James Waters. And basically, I'd done a couple of jobs with them earlier in the year and worked with Rain earlier in the year for the first time, and we just kind of hit it off. And she has this like bonkers view of the world and how she wants sets to look, and it just really gels with. I guess we just really gelled with like our outlook on like making things look a bit like just making things look really fun. And she just wants everything to be as colourful as possible all the time, and that is absolutely fine by me. So that came in, and I think that we were talking about it before the job confirmed. Maybe they asked me for a few ideas, and as soon as it was confirmed, I just started mood boarding and getting references together for this bedroom. And we had to really Rain and I developed the idea of how the set was going to. All it said in the script was that the bedroom grows. Somehow the bedroom grows. But we had to work out how that was going to happen. And we ended up just like mooching about one day at her house and like just chatting about how things could look, sketching things out. And then I saw this matchbox on her table, and I was like, oh my God, it could be like the bed. And I started like playing, just having little maquettes, making up little maquettes and like working out how things could move. Yeah. Oh, there's the matchbox.
Is that something that you quite often do, like working on that? I mean, I know model building is a big thing previous, but is that's it felt like when I first saw that video that you included, I wondered, I was like, oh, is this something that you always look for in these sort of ideas, is working at some sort of smaller scale and just sort of experimenting and with ideas?
I very rarely build a model, and I really only do that if there are moving set elements, because it's really important to work out. For me, the way my brain works, I kind of need to like get my hands on it and just like play around with it. It's kind of like nice to imagine and play, like use play in that way to like develop the sets as well, because I probably, if I hadn't seen that matchbox, we might have like thought of another way to do the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. It's really awesome. You the whole thing has a very strong saturated look. I mean, there's color all over it. Was that something that was initially part of the plan, or did that develop? How did that develop really?
Yeah, we wanted it to be colourful, and I developed a kind of colour palette based off the mood boards that I'd put together. And then I suppose it's always nice to like put restrictions on yourself. So to get a look to become a kind of stylized look, it's nice to have rules. So for this set, there was kind of like a no black and white rule to it, and various other things. And then all of a sudden, we also had rules about like what kind of hues to use, and we didn't want to use too many pastels, for example. And if we were going to use a pastel, it couldn't be like a milky, girly pastel. It had to have a little bit of something else to it. So yeah, like that's how we kind of developed it. And I often also develop the palettes by like going through the prop houses myself and like just starting to like pick up props and see what works well, and seeing everything together and then going, oh no, that thing has to come out. It doesn't work. And then you get an understanding that it's because, oh, like we shouldn't be using yellow in the set or something.
Yeah, that's a really interesting to know. I got quite a few questions coming in there. Hello to everybody. Hello to Ali Albion, Jay Alves, Alice Duke, Kieran Grant. Hello, Arturo, Maureen. Here we go. Let's see what have we got here. Maureen asks, do you feel production design will be affected or change post-COVID? We're gonna come back to Virgin, but let's just ask this. Do you think it'll change at all, or are you hoping that it just stays the same?
I think that there's going to be I don't know how long the social distancing measures are going to last, but I can't imagine it's going to be, people are going to be comfortable just like getting up all in each other's faces like we used to do, and having pre-lights on the same day as dresses and builds, and all the departments just like completely on top of each other. I think that there has to be, it would also be better for everyone if that wasn't the case. It would make things, days shorter, and it would give everyone a bit more of a balance. But then there's always like the budget to weigh up, and you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, I guess
it's hard to see how we would be able to make the Virgin ad like that in the way we made it anytime soon.
Wow, that's sad news, but real talk. Maureen also asks, lots of questions. Thanks, Maureen. Advice for those starting out in production design. And if not that question, the question that I always ask is, if you were to go back in time to talk to young Anna, is there anything that you would tell young Anna? You might just be stingy and just go like, nah, she's got to learn. But would you give any advice to her?
Yeah, I would. So, what was the first question?
Well, let's just answer Maureen's. My question is ridiculous. Maureen, is any advice for starting out?
Oh yeah, it's okay. So, if you're starting out, I would say assisting is like, don't jump into designing straight away, because you will learn and you'll train, and it will be just invaluable what you learn when you're assisting people. And don't just assist one designer, assist many, and also assist set decorators, and just become invaluable. And you can ask questions, but also just make yourself really useful. And like, people are desperate for good assistants. Also get a driving license if you haven't got one, and maybe buy a crappy car. Actually, definitely buy a crappy car. And then what advice I would give myself starting out, I would probably say making the transition from assisting to designing wasn't too bad or hard when I was doing music videos, but then commercials are a slightly different kettle of fish. And I think every time I sort of did a new commercial, I was learning just so much about what my role was, and what the role of production designer on commercials, and how that differed from doing shorts and films and music videos. And that would be that you have to know how the department operates and what it needs to operate smoothly. So you probably need somewhere to store props, and you really need a really good team to look after those props. And don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to really think about what you need, and then ask production for those things.
Hope that's helpful, Maureen. There's a lot there, a lot of really good golden advice. If you were to go back, just my other question, if you would go back specifically tailored to yourself, is there anything that you would do differently, or would tell younger Anna to do? A shortcut, perhaps? Yeah,
a shortcut.
Or just definitely don't do this.
I guess I was sort of answering that question at the end of. So I think that, I would make sure I wouldn't be scared to ask for like a prop store or an additional prop man, or any of those things that I knew really I needed, but I was worried to ask at the beginning because it would mean that us going over budget. But producers understand that if it's going to save time to have an extra prop man or an additional prop, or like a bigger space for the art department to lay out props, if it's going to save time, it's going to save a lot more money than what that prop man's fee for the day is.
That's fair. Maureen also says thank you, really helpful. And another question: what is the difference between set design and production design?
Well, set design is what you refer to a theatre set designer, or traditionally a still set designer. And production design is a title that is used in feature films, and it's regarding the entire production. So you are creating the world of the production, and that's where the word production design comes from. Ostensibly, it's the same thing.
It's just a lot more elements. This, I guess, you have to
Yeah.
handle much like the director. You're kind of handling that vision and then giving it a lot more shape and color and character. I mean, your design also informs a lot of the other departments, right? Or reacts to a lot of the other departments, right? Whether it's the DOP or wardrobe, everything like that, right?
Yeah. And that's my favorite part of the job, is the collaboration and working with really cool people. So yeah, it's like everyone's working together. If people aren't working together, it's not a nice atmosphere, and it's never going to really like look as good as if everyone just has a good time and collaborate and work hard.
Yeah, cool. You got some more questions. Thanks, guys. Just keep them coming. Let's see. Here we go. Wondering if you, from J Alves, wondering if you ever indulge or investigate the review culture type of content on YouTube. I imagine it would be interesting to see how much detail audiences pick on and how much it affects the storyline. I need to go back and read that because my brain is melting, J Alves. I'm sorry. It's probably I'd try to chew too much there at once. Let me process that. Can I just selfishly from a development point of view, how integral, like from the very beginning, how integral are directors' treatments in influencing the research process, or how you put something together? Do you always feel like you need to find a balance between reflecting the original vision, or do you like to say, okay, you know what, actually I've got a completely different idea. This is what we could do and propose something different. Was that too dangerous?
No, I would never. Often it depends how big the job is, but normally the treatments have like a starting point, like a visual starting point for all departments, and it's often about like really the mood of the film and maybe the colors. You can tell if it's something that's going to be stylized or naturalistic, and then I see my job as being to really hone that and use that as a springboard to like go, oh, that reminds me of this one picture I remember seeing in that book I haven't opened in like 6 years, and I've got to go and find that book, and where the fuck is that book? And then you like end up just from reading that book, you find new references that you then Google and then get lost down a rabbit hole. And yeah, I think the treatment is super important. Like treatments are just like little masterpieces these days, good ones.
Oh. Thanks. We try to make them that way when we do them every single day. Yes, people value those treatments. Work hard on them. Guys, if you have any questions, make sure that they get in. I'm sorry if it's just too hot, J Alves. You haven't asked a bad question. It's a very good one. My brain can't process it. Jay might be asking about creating. Have you considered a YouTube series about production design? I think that's a pretty good question anyway. I'll let Lily process that one. Okay, so Lily asks, Anna, is there a particular visual style or time period you'd love to create that you haven't gotten your hands on yet?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'd quite like to do like a sort of space age, like a Jetsons.
Cool. Oh, Jetsons, 60s.
Futuristic. I'd quite like to do that. I don't think I've done that yet.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool one to admire. Let me just go here. So with the team there was, you work with some such quite a lot, yeah. You do quite a few productions with them, correct?
I've done quite a few.
Yeah. Do you have any other particular collaborators that you really enjoy working with, or that you sort of come back to time and time again?
I've recently started working a bit with Joseph Mann at Blink, who is really, his work's really cool, and it's something that I've never really done before because he works a lot with. Sometimes he works with miniatures and a lot with puppets. So it's really always fun to get inside his brain and like work out what his like imagination is. Because with someone like Joe, I'd say he has like quite a clear idea of what what exactly is going on in his head, and his treatments are amazing as well. Like he's very clear and communicative about how he kind of thinks things should be, but is also a great collaborator because he's very open to suggestions and development to that. So that's really fun. It's the anchor butter job is something that you've been showing on here. Rain and Alan Miller, obviously. I did the Nike job and the Virgin job and Oscar Healthcare, and something for Stella. And we were actually about to fly to Canada to do an amazing Pinterest commercial just before lockdown started. So that was like something we'd been working on for a few weeks, and it was a bit of a heartbreaking situation to not be able to do that because sets were going to be amazing. Wow. And there's all sorts of, I love everyone I work with. People in this industry are just generally really nice. You don't really often meet bad people.
There are a few. There's a few, but there are lots of lovely ones. There's absolutely lots of lovely ones. I just want somebody to say, I met a dickhead the other day. I'm like, yes, there definitely are, guys. But there's lovely people like Anna here. I see that there's a questions come in from Kieran here on the opposite end of the spectrum to making sure that the rug in Mystery Jets was perfectly flat. Are there any times you brought imperfections to productions that you're really proud of?
Oh, that's another really good question. Good. And actually, I learned a really good sort of lesson from another designer. Back when I was assisting, I assisted David James White for a bit, who's a set designer for stills and fashion, and he is an amazing designer. And he worked a lot with Celine at the time, and Phoebe Philo was the creative director of Celine. And he told me the story about how he was dressing a set, and it was really, really cool. Everything looked great, and she just kept. We just need to make it feel a little bit awkward, because now it looks beautiful, and this is the drop. This is how we needed to get it. This is where we needed to get it. But if we just like make it look just change something, like take that thing out where there's this like big awkward weird hole, and suddenly like the shot looks really interesting. And it's kind of that piece of advice has really stuck with me, because you don't want things to just look like a Pinterest shot. You don't. That's the opposite of what I want things to look like, because that's a bit boring, and that's kind of like what everyone's doing. I kind of want it to look different and new and fresh. Say something else.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Yeah, it's say something else, but also it brings a little bit of believability to the image as well, doesn't it? It makes your eye sort of trust it more. It feels real, even if it's a heightened reality, isn't it?
Yeah, and texture is so important. So on the other scale of things, you wouldn't shoot like clean windows don't look great. Most of the time you want the windows to be dirty, add some texture, and you want to be adding like various textures to floors and dirtying down things to age them. And it shouldn't feel like a set.
Yeah. Oh, that's texture's what it's all about. I love that. I'm just going to remember that next time my girlfriend tells me we have to get the windows cleaned. It's an aesthetic. Actually, speaking on strange things, I need to pull up this video, just a little segue on the whole strange things that happen. There's this video that you've given me of somebody floating a piece of pizza. What is happening here? And is he all right?
That is my long-suffering and completely adorable prop man, Jason Bradley, who is trying to help post-production by floating a pizza. So at the end of the Virgin Media, there's supposed to be this thing called the Storm, where all of Darcy, the little girl's favourite things start floating in the air. So like we spent a week developing like what Darcy's favourite things are, and they include sloths, Richard Attenborough, aliens, boy bands, pizza, and various things like that. So you'll see when you watch the ad that in the posters on her wall, all of those things are reflected. But we also had to get 3D objects, and the VFX team were charged with making them all float. So Jason, who you can see now, like wafting a piece of pizza around, was, I mean, at this point we were all so tired and just like pissing ourselves. The entire crew was just watching him with different like props, like floating about the set like a weird spaceman.
Meanwhile, it all got thrown out. You're just like, it's prank, just great prank. They know what a floating pizza looks like, mate.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that they did. It was Unreal Studios. They didn't use any of those plates that we shot in order to create the floating elements. Built them all in 3D.
They're just like, yeah, thanks though. It looks great in the end though. I mean, all of it does come together very well. So it was definitely time well spent. I do love the mood boards I've just cut to now, which you'll quickly catch up. There's a lot of 90s cinema and TV reference in there. Is that, I feel like this was a lot of fun for you to get to dredge a lot of these things up. Is there a certain period that you enjoy mining more than any other? Because I mean the 90s are so rich.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to show my age, but let's be frank. It's pretty clear that I was alive in the 90s, and this is an era that I really adore designing and taking from. And I was absolutely obsessed with Clarissa Explains It All as a kid. And right at the beginning, as soon as I got the treatment, I texted Rain and I just said, Clarissa Explains It All, we just have to give Clarissa Explains It All loops to this thing. And so the bedside table is a complete homage to her room, because I got Matt Hancock, one of our lovely art department assistants, to paint zebra print by hand, this like horrible white bedside I got from Super Hire, and make it this really cool. So basically everything was like bespoke, and that was Clarissa became the like totem pole for like how we wanted her bedroom to feel. Everything had to feel like she'd thought about it, and everything was a bit bespoke, and like she just customized everything.
Yeah, like someone her age would, I guess. Do you feel like you always want to? I'm sorry, guys, I will get to your questions just as selfishly. Do you feel like you always is there something in you that always says like, if I was in your position, I'd always kind of want to put my own little signature or little piece somewhere, much like that table that you were just describing from Clarissa? Is there always something that you're just like, look, this is a little piece of me in there, so then later on I'll see it and I'll be like, that's me there. It's a little piece of my soul there. Or do you feel like the whole thing is yours?
Oh, well, not. I mean, I don't really.
You sneak those lamps in.
I think I care so much about all of the sets that I feel like I'm always giving up a bit. Like it's always coming from my heart, really. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. Like we do creative things, so I think I always say this to people, that it's not like we're accountants. We can't like just go home and switch off. Like everything that I'm interested in and everything that I love is poured into my work. So it kind of feels like an expression of me anyway, in a way.
Oh, no, that's like totally fair. Yeah. Let me get to some of your questions, guys. Darren Tan asks, hi Anna, a question on collaboration with a director. In terms of collaboration, would you prefer a director who has a mood board or color palette prepared, or would you prefer them to hand over creative control to you, I guess, earlier on? Give you more control over shaping the vision, I guess.
I think that I think it's better to be broader, because at that initial stage of a project, if you have got everything, if everything's being dictated by a particular mood board, color palette from the start, that doesn't lead to much development, and the research that you then do won't kind of, it doesn't really lend itself to adding to that kind of feel. So it feels like you're slightly the tail's slightly wagging the dog, but it is amazing when a director has pulled references, for sure. That's brilliant.
I
And
guess, yeah, it leaves you not having to sort of stab around in the dark and guess, is this it? Do you like this? Do you like that?
yeah,
So it makes your job a little bit easier. And then, I mean, it's the start of a conversation, really, isn't it? It's like saying, this is it, this is what you start with. Yes, I'm aligned with that, but I can also add in some extra elements as well, I guess. Let's see, here we go. So, another one from Maureen. You're good on fire today. How long do you usually work on a project for? And what's the longest you've worked on something, and why?
Well, it depends how long they pay me for. That's normally the kind of. Normally, I'll either get a call and they say, "Oh, we're shooting next week. We need you to just start and design a set and do everything and build a set, and we're shooting it next week." Or we'll have like maybe a month to do it, or it could be 6 weeks. So it's normally between. It's probably normally between a month and 6 weeks, really, in terms of the first time I get a call. I'd say probably 6 weeks is an average time for a project to get to the end. But that doesn't mean I'm working on it every day. And often there'll be like a break of a week within that. I think in terms of me working full time on a project, probably often I'm trying to work out the normal amount of days I usually invoice for.
Yeah, that's a secret. You don't say. What's the longest project? I guess to the second part of that question was is there one that you remember? You're just like, whoa, that was the longest or the biggest?
I was I guess Virgin Media was pretty long in terms of the longest commercial, because that was. We had a really nice time, enough time to develop it and find the right locations and develop the set designs for the builds on that. It felt like it was like a really properly budgeted commercial, and it had to be because obviously they were expecting like big things from it, and to shoot in the UK was to shoot a build in the UK like that was like a real treat because often we're like flown out to various other countries to do that. So yeah, I think that was probably about 6 weeks full time, maybe a bit longer. I can't remember. My brain doesn't retain information like that.
Yeah, this job that I'm playing right now, I actually spoke to Alexandra Green about it because she was, I think she was movement. She might have been involved in the movement choreography for this piece with Juno Temple. This is I believe you told me that this is a relatively early job for you, and that you had an interesting experience on it.
Yeah, this is a job that Some Such rang me about. George Belfield, who's a wicked director, had got this job, and we had to jump on it. I think what happened was they changed the goalposts of the shoot, so suddenly it had to be moved forward by a week, and there was literally no time to design it. And this was probably at the time the biggest sort of set because we had to build 2 big bedroom sets, and it was quite detailed. It was like the biggest set that I'd done at that time, set build, I should say. And I think I didn't have any time to start worrying about it. I didn't have a single time to for that self-doubt to kick in, because it was like, we need the set designs tomorrow. We need the mood boards tomorrow. We need the set designs the next day, because the build is about to happen in 3 or 4 days time from the moment I got the treatment. So again, I ran to my reference books and just started looking at old, because the treatment was really cool, and it had a lot of interesting Twin Peaks vibes mixed with some fashion stuff, and I had a lot of references in my brain that I was I knew could be amazing for it. So I just kind of didn't think about it, and I just went on autopilot and started researching, putting together boards, putting together a palette for the 2 sets, the good set and the bad set, and then it was okay, do the design, do the drawing properly, send it off, go to the prop houses, decorate the sets, go to the studio, set, decorate, shoot. and it was great. It was like a crazy timeline. We did it in a week, I think, honestly.
Crazy. It's really great though. I love it. It's quite weird because we've referenced this in our work a number of times, and yet finding two people who've worked on it in a short space of time is pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad you referenced it.
Yeah, we reference a lot of the work. That and Virgin stuff. Just, I would give it all away. Yeah, it's weird when it must be weird when something you work on. Obviously, you've had inspiration things, and then that becomes inspiration to other people and stuff. That must be quite a weird.
Yeah, it's nice when I get a treatment, and some of my sets are in their treatment.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes, that must feel very good. You also have in the past you've been a lecturer returning to Chelsea. How is that? Has that influenced the way you think about this role in any way, or has it helped in any way, or I'm just interested in that?
Yeah, so Chelsea asked me to come back a few times as a visiting lecturer because obviously, like I said, I studied there, and I just kind of loved it. And there was a year where I was like so busy. I was taking on like a lot of jobs, like juggling a lot of jobs, and I just kind of realised that what I probably needed was some space to stop like shooting so much, basically. And what I wanted to do was use like this newfound love of like teaching, and they offered me a job which was like a 1 day a week role, and they were super flexible when I had to like swap days or miss a week because a shoot had been scheduled for a Tuesday. I was always working on a Tuesday. And it just was great to like meet and work with young people and like see what they were up to and help them kind of like hone what they were interested in and work all of that stuff out. Because I remember just being so lost back then and without a direction. If I hadn't like, yeah, our education's really, it's not the same as it used to be. There's like a lot of problems and in the kind of like the way that the university and art college is structured these days. And yeah, I really found it I got a lot out of it. It's a nice thing to do. But yeah. I've actually taken a sabbatical this year because I did it for about 3 years, and at the end I was just like, actually, I just want to focus on production design, and I can't really. I felt like I was in two places at once because the Chelsea role got a little bit more. It was just a bit bigger.
Yeah, I guess you've got to focus on one or the other. It's great to have you pick this one. One thing I do want to ask you definitely before you go is I'm just very conscious of the time I've taken with you there. Are there any certain tools or things that you have that are sort of like, these are the things that you have to have with you, or that you find super useful to have in your toolkit as a production designer? There's something that's like essential that you love to use or can't live without?
Yes. I can't live without my I can't live without Adobe Creative Suite. I can't live without my Dulux paint palette.
Okay.
And I can't live without my books and access to the library to look at back catalogues of magazines. And I probably at this point can't live without the internet, which is the same for us.
I dread to imagine what this would be like without it. But yeah, thank you so much for it. I would love to ask a whole bunch of very ridiculous, stupid questions from myself and you guys. Thank you all so much for your questions. But I'm hoping that Anna has enjoyed this experience and will come back and talk to us again. At some point.
So much. Thank you for having me on. I should also say that tape measure is obviously invaluable. Can't leave without saying that. Yes,
tape measure, yes. And if you guys want more insights from Anna as well, things that she may have shared with us today, or perhaps more, you're on a podcast that's coming out soon. Yeah, could you just tell us more about that while I pull it up?
Yeah, there's another designer, Kelly Sinclair Smith, has started a really good Instagram page called Production Design Digest, and it's all about production design and the greats. I don't mean like me, I mean like the great production designers of features that have gone in the past. And she started a podcast to go with it, and I'm her first guest, which I'm very honoured to be. So yeah.
Amazing. Go check that out, guys. It'll be out soon, relatively soon.
It's out next week.
Wonderful. So there you go. So you can follow Claire Smith there, and of course the Instagram handle is production.design.digest. Go and check that out. Obviously, did you guys maybe meet because Vision and Wizzo are like intertwined, right? So is that how you met?
Yeah. Well, Kelly actually used to be my assistant.
Ah.
So she assisted me for a long time. She's brilliant, and started designing herself, and is now rep by Vision. So we get to share the same Christmas party, which is brilliant. We're close friends as well.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. We'll definitely look out for it. I look forward to checking it out. Guys, thank you all for joining us. Make sure that you follow Anna as well. Drop her a line, say how, whether you love this or not. Whether you loved it or not. I hated it. Don't send her that. Just say how much you loved it, and please don't be a stranger. And remember all those points. Go back and rewind. If you can't rewind, all the contact details for Anna are below. And also, if you Google things, you can also find further interviews and breakdowns of some of the projects that we've shared with you today, if you would like to know more about Anna's process. Anna, thank you all so much, and I look forward to bringing you back again.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Cool. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.